Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, one person is dead after a shooting in southern Kentucky. And foreign policy takes center stage as both the Trump and Harris campaigns press on with 70 days to go until the election.
And temperatures today were in the upper 80s and low 90s, and the warming trend continues. Details in a few minutes.
Dedicated to southern and eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. State police are investigating a shooting that happened in Clinton County in southern Kentucky. Troopers received that call on Saturday, responding to an incident that happened on Wolf River Dock Road. The preliminary investigation found Wesley Russell and his wife, Mary, were involved in a domestic violence incident. Wesley Russell was found with multiple gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. No charges have been filed. The sheriff of Kentucky's smallest county is facing his second DUI charge. State police confirmed troopers arrested Terry Gray of Robertson County. They say they got a call yesterday evening about someone driving a tractor off the road. According to his arrest citation, Gray smelled of alcohol. Troopers say he refused a breathalyzer and called his attorney. He was then taken to the hospital for a blood test before being taken to the Bourbon County Detention Center. He has since been released. A Kentucky man is facing charges after he reportedly jumped through the front glass of a building while trying to get away from police. It happened yesterday morning in Boyle County when police received word about a man in the emergency room who may have been under the influence. Victorino Gonzalez Zapata ran off from police but was later arrested after they found he had jumped through the front glass of Sherwin-Williams in Danville.
Highs today were in the upper 80s and low 90s, and the warming trend will continue as we go throughout the week. The reason why we have a first alert weather day out is because some places will see heat indices well into the triple digits. We'll talk about that in the next check weather. But temperatures right now, again, in the upper 80s towards Hazard as well as Jackson, 90 and Moorhead. Look at Monticello, 93 degrees. Monticello's heat index right now, 98. 10 cooler in London, Hazard's at 88, 89 Jackson, 88 in Prestonsburg, Pikeville. Good evening to you guys. You're at 86 degrees, 90 in Clintwood. All is quiet right now in live pinpoint Doppler radar. And in terms of rain, we'll get a break as we go into tomorrow. Small rain chance in the forecast for the day on Wednesday. High pressure is in control and it's going to stay in control as we go throughout the remainder of the week. We'll be on the back end of it, which is what's going to cause that heat and in some places that humidity to really start to ramp up. So the next 12 hours keeps temperatures in the upper 70s by the 10 o'clock hour, low 70s by 4 a.m., low 70s by the 6 o'clock time frame. When you wake up in the morning, we'll see temperatures in the mid to upper 60s some places, especially towards the Jackson, Hazard, Prestonsburg area, maybe low 70s. I'll have your complete first alert forecast coming up in a few minutes. Steve.
All right, thank you. A bipartisan task force toured the Pennsylvania field where a gunman tried to assassinate former President Donald Trump. The group of House lawmakers surveyed the grounds in Butler County, Pennsylvania, where Trump hosted a rally July 13th. They also made it onto the rooftop where the 20-year-old gunman laid in wait and ultimately opened fire, hitting Trump, critically injuring 2 rallygoers and killing another.
The big thing for us being here today was to actually be on the ground, get familiar with the ground, be comfortable with the questions we were going to ask because of the way it was laid out.
I definitely took note today that there were a lot of lines of sight that appear to have been unsecured that day, that didn't have eyes on or that weren't secured, and certainly at this point a lot more questions than answers.
The panel has until December 13th to submit its findings, including any recommendations for legislative reforms. Former President Trump is trying to tie Vice President Kamala Harris to the Biden administration's chaotic and deadly withdrawal of U.S. soldiers from Afghanistan 3 years ago. CBS's Skylar Henry has the latest from the campaign trail.
Present! Out!
Former President Donald Trump stood alongside family of service members killed during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and laid a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery. It was 3 years ago today, a suicide bomb attack at the Kabul airport killed more than 100 Afghans and 13 U.S. service members. Speaking to National Guard Association members in Detroit, Trump looked to blame Vice President Kamala Harris for the pullout.
caused by Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. The humiliation in Afghanistan set off the collapse of American credibility and respect all around the world.
During his administration, Trump signed a withdrawal agreement with the Taliban that the Biden administration carried out.
The Vice President says she was that last person in the room on that decision. Is that failure also hers?
We've got to stop assigning partisan blame on fundamental things like our national security.
The Harris campaign tells CBS News the vice president will start focusing more on foreign policy as she works to persuade more voters that she's ready to become commander-in-chief. Harris returns to the campaign trail later this week with a bus tour of Georgia. Her campaign sees it as a state that's in play and where they're willing to spend some of the more than $500 million already raised on advertising and get out the vote efforts. Skyler Henry, CBS News, the White House.
Harris and Trump are scheduled to debate each other on September 10th, but the two sides are still squabbling over the ground rules. The Harris campaign wants the candidates' mics left on at all times, as opposed to only when one candidate is speaking, while Trump says he does not want the debate to be moderated by ABC News, as is currently scheduled. He says the network is biased against him. Former Democrat Tulsi Gabbard has announced she is endorsing Republican candidate Donald Trump in this year's election. Gabbard served as the Democratic representative for Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District from 2013 to 2021. Her endorsement of Trump comes just days after independent Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suspended his presidential campaign and endorsed Trump. Healthcare is among the most divisive issues on the campaign trail. Both presidential candidates are making firm stances on abortion, Medicare, and the cost of prescription drugs. These are medications Dr. Dave Montgomery says have become unaffordable for many of his patients on Medicare. And while there are a number of factors playing into this, Dr. Montgomery said this year's general election has the power to change some of those costs.
This is not just a president or a vice president that's going to change your health care. It's going to be the entire landscape.
Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump have vowed to reduce these costs, but the Harris-Walz campaign says that was then, back in 2020, but now they are pointing to Project 2025. Several of former President Donald Trump's allies are facing a high-stakes hearing in the Arizona election interference case. Today, a judge is hearing arguments that could determine whether they could face prison sentences if they are convicted in a criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. This will be the first hearing since a grand jury handed down criminal charges against the reported fake electors from Arizona. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, when you are in your 20s, retirement may not be the first thing on your mind, but we have some money tips for folks in their 20s.
And in the world of weather, we'll see temperatures going into the 90s tomorrow. Some places will see heat indices in the triple digits. Details of the First Alert forecast in a few minutes.